I'm curious, do you feel like, Chuck, the Mavericks today as it stands on paper are a better basketball team than they were at the end of regulation in that final game in the Western Conference Finals?
I think they are better. I don't know how much, though, that will be reflected in the standings. And I just think the Western Conference is monstrous. I mean, other than the Rockets, the Spurs, and what apparently will be Utah, those you got 12 teams, and I'll even put Oklahoma City in the mix because I think Oklahoma City is going to be a pain in the butt to play against. I mean, I don't think they're a playoff team, but you better play against them because if you don't, you will get beat. It's just going to be ridiculous every night in the Western Conference. So I don't know if the final record will reflect itself, but certainly in the area that they needed the most improvement in from their loss to Golden State, they have taken care of that with the trade for Wood and the addition of McGee.
You know, Chuck, I was going to ask you because you mentioned about Christian Wood, and there seems to be this thought about, we're hearing from the Mavs and that, it's kind of leaking out maybe, or, somebody's telling us about, Tim Cato, guys like that are talking to people that maybe that Christian Wood is not going to be a starter. And, and there's people, if you talk to at the Mavs, will tell you that, that he needs to become more mature and a little bit more, focused on defense and stuff like that. Mavs handling this the right way, aren't they? Just not letting him go plug and play, right? They're just are they trying to send him a message that like, hey, you might have done some things at the Rockets, but you're coming here to do it a little bit different way with us.
I mean, I think there's a pretty good message that's being sent, but you know what? But at the same time, I don't know that he really need the message when it's evident to everybody what's at stake here this year. Mm-hmm. I mean, for the first time, he's actually playing with a good team. He's certainly playing with the best player that he's ever played with, who's going to give him every opportunity to succeed. He fills a huge need for the Mavericks in just his singular ability to rebound the ball, and maybe that takes some pressure off of Luka, that Luka doesn't feel like he's got to get 13 rebounds a game in order to make that work. And again, I guess through the years, I've become less taken by the whole, starting, who starts and right. Because really ultimately it's more important who finishes. And so, I mean, if Christian Wood is only playing, 25 minutes, I think we got a problem, but I don't think that's the way it's been presented. I think, he's going to be a 30 to 32 minute a game guy. And if that's the case, then that doesn't really matter at that point if he starts. I mean, it could very well be okay that JaVale starts the game and taking on the Dwight Powell role, if you will, and then Wood comes in, at 5 or 6 minutes into the game, and he gets his minutes, and that's kind of how that rotation works. I mean, we'll see at some point if they wind up playing together, as we seem to be going into an era, perhaps, or revisiting an era of having a couple of legitimate bigs on the floor at the same time. There's a lot for them to look at. In September, for sure, September and October before. And then let's face it, I mean, they're not going to be a finished product on October the 19th when the regular season starts. But, they'll be doing some experimenting, but at the same time, you still have to win games. You still have to win games given the nature of the conference. So it's a very interesting time for them because clearly there are expectations around them now that were not there at this time last year.
Chuck, do you feel like the way the roster looks today is the way it'll look on night one of the season, or do you think they're looking at trying to make another move or two before the season begins?
I mean, they've got a roster spot, so that does give them the flexibility, I guess, to look around and see what happens. And I know, look, there's been a lot of talk about Goran Dragic and not signing here and going to the Bulls, and the story that came out today, with his comments about why he ultimately signed with the Bulls and didn't sign here. It may very well be the Mavericks feel like they can get a player either today on July 13th, or they can get a player to fill that role if indeed they feel they need to fill that role sometime right before training camp starts. So, and then with the Durant and Mitchell issues, you're still hanging over the entire league. Who knows what's going to shake out and might be available for them to go get.
When you heard the comments though from Dragic, is it one of those things, Chuck, that we should believe, or is this something that that's really not the way it went down with the Mavs?
Well, I think you can take it from what I've heard that Dragic wanted a certain number of minutes. He wanted to be guaranteed a certain number of minutes, and the Mavericks were not ready to give him those minutes. And again, given how he played for much of last year, at the end of the year after Toronto sent him home because, oh, by the way, he wasn't getting minutes that he wanted. He didn't play very well.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a couple of really good games playing with Luka for Slovenia in the World Cup qualifiers, and obviously Eurobasket's coming up in September, and we'll get an even better look at it then. But other than the game he played against the Mavericks last year, he was not very good. He really wasn't, and he's 36 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And talking to several people around the Mavericks last week when I went to practice, it was made clear that Luka and Goran are close, and they would love to be able to play together, but this is not going to affect Luka in any way at all. I mean, Luka wants to win. That's all he wants. He's not worried about having a buddy around him or anything like that. He'll be 24 years old the end of February. I mean, it's nice to have those guys, but you don't need those guys. So we'll see what they do. The one thing that'll be kind of interesting to see is if they really only have both Luka and Dinwiddie. Number one, does Dinwiddie even start at that point? Do they put Hardaway back in the lineup at the 2 and have him start the game, and then you bring Dinwiddie in, with the second unit to run the second unit, and then mentioning Wood, if Wood's coming off the bench, what we've seen of Wood is that he can really handle the ball.
Yeah,
he can create for himself. Now I don't know how well he's going to create for others, but he can create for himself. And so, how does that all play out? So again, I think we want to have everything in a very nice, tidy box, but I don't think that that's possible, really, until probably after Christmas, or maybe even after the All-Star break. When you really start honing in and deciding how you're going to play in the playoffs.
Chuck, I was curious, you just say you got back from Vegas. What did your basketball eyes tell you about Jaden Hardy? And I know you were tweeting about A.J. Lawson, too, as well. And so I was just curious of, again, obviously Lawson catching your eye, but maybe give us a thumbnail on Hardy and what you saw live, and maybe some people whispering to you while you were watching the games in the stands.
He's young. He's young, and he's a little wild, and there's a lot of stuff that's got to get beaten out of him. A lot of AAU stuff. That's got to get taken out of his game. And it's almost like the worst thing that happened to him was that he went for 28 in the first game, because that got everybody's attention. And then he tried to follow it up and really forced things in both the Utah and Phoenix games. He finished really well against Chicago, but one of the knocks on him has been, even though he's got a really good upper body, that he doesn't finish all that well, and we kind of saw that in the 2 games with Utah and Phoenix. He's a good shooter who didn't shoot the ball well in either of those games. I mean, it's just people like assuming that he's like a rotation piece for them. I mean, everybody just needs to tap the brakes on that. I mean, he is not ready for that. And I think the Mavericks have shown they've got pretty good player development, and certainly a guy like God Shamgod to work with him on his handle, to tighten up his handle, because you saw I don't know how much of the games you saw, but the ball was knocked away from him repeatedly. A lot of looseness, repeatedly. So that the handle's got to get a little tighter, the decision making's got to get a little bit better. But when you step back and you realize that they wanted to see how he would perform under stress, and especially in the fourth quarter, the first two games. I mean, those games went right to the wire, and you want to get an idea. Okay, what can he do? And he showed a couple of good things, and he showed a couple of bad things too. So they got a much better picture of him, and can really put together a plan for him. But I don't think that anybody should be really counting on him to be doing a whole lot for this team this year. And if he does, then I have a feeling that it's going to be a matter of the Mavericks not being where everybody wants them to be.
If you could ask Jaden Hardy one question right now, what would you ask him?
What do you feel you have to most improve on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there's a lot there. I mean, and to his credit, he wants it all. Now he wants all the information as fast as he can to try to get himself up and running, because he feels like he should be able to play. And I don't know if he completely understands the jump that he is making right now. And I mean, there's no messing around in this league. You mess around, you get yourself in big trouble. So, you've got to be really on point with everything that you're doing out there. And I think the Mavericks are doing a pretty good job of that. I mean, there's the thirst to learn, and that's great. But at the same time, the Mavericks want to make sure that he has everything in the toolbox and ready to roll before they actually roll them out.